Hello and welcome back, and my name's Paul, and today we are starting our batch of Burris Creek Jasper for the Feather River rock tumbling competition out of California. So we entered and we got our material sent to us, so we're going to do a little shot of what it starts looking like, and we're going to take some pictures and some videos along the way and all the way till we're on our finished product. So today all we've done is just got it and washed it, and we're gonna look at what we've got, and then we're gonna do some grinding on a couple of places. So we've got a lot of different colors going on. We got some reds and some dark colors. A lot of them have, you can see the white. I don't know if there's like quartz veins in it or what there is, but there's just that one vein you can see running through there. And there's a lot of them that have some of that going on. Not going to look at them too close right now, but I'm afraid it's probably going to be in a pretty long video by the time we're all done. But this is all the stuff that we got. This is one of my favorites so far. Just from looking at them, it's got some cool lines going on right there, some whites in with the reds. If I can get it to focus better, that'd be nice. And some grays. A lot of them have this gold brown look to them. Let's see. It doesn't want to focus real good there. It focuses nice on the stuff behind though. But that's what we've got. So we're going to, first of all, we're going to get the grinder out, and we're going to take care of some of the larger crevices like that and like that, just to knock some of those down and save us some time and also save us material, so we don't have to tumble it so long and make the whole thing so small just to get it looking nice. Yeah, so it's all pretty well about, there's a couple different shades, some browns, some golds, and some reds, and then some of this darker color material. You can see the veins in that. I'm hoping that that really stands out once it's polished, but we will see. It's a learning curve. It's the first time we've done this, and I'm excited just to send some in, and I'm hoping they give you results, good or bad, because I know they do a scoring system, and 150, I believe, was perfect. So we will see what kind of score we can get. So, like I say, there's what we have. And the first thing we're going to do here is get the grinder out and the flat lap and grind some of the really sharp points, like that little guy right there. We'll just take that right off so we don't have to waste too much time in the tumbler, because they're probably going to be in there for a long time anyway. So we'll come back after we've ground them a little bit, and we'll take a look, and we'll put some into the barrel and get them rolling in stage one. All right, so we've done just a little bit of light grinding on some spots that were big valleys or cracks that would take a long time to tumble. So we've got our 1 pound barrel, and I'm going to tumble this whole, all these rocks for this competition in this barrel, so that way I can keep them separate from everything else and I don't get it mixed up with anything else. So we're ready to get started on our first week of coarse grit. And I'm going to use 4670 coarse grit, and we'll roll them as many weeks as it takes till they're perfect. And as we start running out of material, we'll have to add filler and stuff, but for now, we've got plenty of rock. So we'll fill the barrel 2/3 full. Try to get some larger ones and some smaller ones in there just to have different sizes. Well, the first week they always dwindle down the most because they round off all the corners and they'll fit in there better. So I'm a little bit fuller than I probably want to be, but I think we're going to run with that. Actually, I think after they settled in there, I got room for one more. So we've got our rocks. We'll put our water in to just below the basically so it's below the level of the rocks, but right up there to the bottom of the top layer of rock. That looks good. And we're going to run 3 tablespoons of 4670 coarse grit. And we'll put that on the tumbler and we'll be ready to check back in on it next week. And we'll check our progress every week. Today is the fun part. Our Burris Creek Jasper for the Feather River Lapidary and Mineral Club rock tumbling contest has been tumbling for 1 week. So that's when you see the biggest change in your rocks. See what they're starting to turn into. Pretty excited how they look after 1 week. The slurry looks nice and red, orange. Maybe it doesn't show up on the camera so much, but it's got a pretty good orange tint to it compared to some other stuff I've done. Oh, yeah. Ooh, that was fun. Right. Things are starting to get nice and rounded down on these. They're going to probably spend a long time in coarse grit. Wow, that's got like, looks like red paint splatter or something on it. That's really cool. I couldn't see that before. So I'll go through these, look at them. I don't imagine that anything is going to be ready to go the next stage after 1 week. As a matter of fact, I'm sure nothing is. But I'll look at them, rinse through them, and we'll be back and we'll load it back up and see what we can fit in the barrel and get it ready to go for another week. Like I said, after 1 week, nothing is done, but this was one of my favorites when we started. And it's starting to round off pretty nice, and I still think it's one of my favorites yet. It's going to have several weeks in there to get that little notch out of there. And there's one little notch there. And other than that, it just got a little rounding up left to do on it. And then this is probably my biggest surprise. It's got a lot of those white lines, whatever that is, in it that I couldn't see before it tumbled for 1 week. And that one's got some really neat stuff going on. And I like the fact that it's a big one. It may tumble for a long time. It'll be probably quite a bit smaller by the time it's done. But that one's looking nice. So, after 1 week, the barrel is less full than it was. Everything's gotten smaller, so we have room for some new stuff. There's actually some rocks in there that I don't remember having stuff that small, or maybe something broke a couple pieces off. I don't know, but I'm going to have to do some counting. I knew how many I had, so we've got room for more. So we'll put this one in. That one's got some of the white lines in it right there. Oh yeah, when I get it wet, you can really see it. So that one can go in. Maybe these two. And we're just about back to the 3/4. There's a little chunk. I don't know what that is. About 3/4 full. Can that go? I think that'll go. So we have it loaded back up. That's what we have left out of our 3.5 pounds that we got for the contest. Loaded up, water's in. We've got 3 tablespoons of the 4670 grit. Put that in. And we're ready to button it back up, put it on the tumbler, and we'll roll another week. Our Burris Creek Jasper's been rolling for 2 weeks. I've already rinsed it, gone through everything, and after 2 weeks, nothing's ready to move to medium yet. But there are a couple pieces that are getting pretty close. And I've got a couple of my favorites here I was looking at. This one's got some really cool bands, some white lines running through it. And it's one of the bigger ones, so I'm thinking that that's going to be, I'm hoping that one turns out good. That's one of my favorites. But it's got some pretty good, it's got a little flaw right there. And then it's got some stuff on the backside here, and I know it probably is hard to see in the camera, but there's a flaw there and a couple things there. But I mean, for the most part, it's looking really good. So there's that one. And then this is another one that we looked at last week that's kind of almost greenish, and it's got like, it almost looks like red paint splattered on it or something like that. And that one's turning out to be really nice. You can really start to see a lot of stuff in this that you couldn't see before it was tumbled. Or rolled in coarse, I guess. So, yeah. But it's still got a pretty good spot right there that's going to take a couple of weeks to get out. And a few other spots. And this is another one like that big one that we looked at. It's the same kind of color scheme. It's got the tans and the browns and the gold colors with the white lines in it. And that one actually, it's got a little bad spot right there and a couple spots there. But that one's actually looking really nice. This surface right here is all nice and flat, and edges are rolling over nice. So that one could be one of our first ones to come out. And then this one, it's got some cool reds and whites and oranges on the back here that I didn't really notice. It must be one that I just threw in last week for the first time. So it's only been in a week, but it looks pretty cool. So that one's turning out nice. I like that one. And then this one's kind of been my favorite since I've gotten the rocks. It's got the reds and the whites. And it's tumbling up nice. It still has a spot there, and there's one there, and there's a spot there. So there's a lot of time left on it. But they're coming right along. And we've got our water in. I think that's a little too much. That'll work. I'm thinking we can throw a couple more rocks in. I don't know if I want to throw in one big one or a couple of smaller ones. I think I'll throw that one in when I'm able to take some stuff out. So we will throw in that one. Let me see. I don't know. I think we're going to go with that big one. I'd like to give that big one a lot of time to roll. So we're going to do that. So we got that added this week. I've got 3 tablespoons of the 4670 grit. Add that in. And we'll button it up. Get it back on the tumbler. Roll another week. And we'll check them next week. It's been 3 weeks on the Burris Creek Jasper. And I've got one that is looking really close. There's just a couple of little spots that I want to roll another week. Get it wet. It's got some pretty nice colors to it. Some darker colors and some yellow in there. So that one's looking really, really close. And this one is also getting pretty close. It's one of my new favorites, I think. It's the one that looks like it's got like green with some red splatter on it, like paint or whatever. But it's got a little spot right there. And there's another little spot right there. So, I mean, it's coming along. It's looking pretty good, but that's probably going to be a few weeks yet to get those 2 spots out of there. at least a few weeks, I would say. So there's those two, and I think I've got room to throw at least one more in. I think we'll go with that. We've got the water in. We've got 3 tablespoons of the 4670. And it's ready to go back onto the tumbler for another week, and we'll look at it again. Alright, so we're 4 weeks in on our Burris Creek Jasper, and I thought there's a lot of stuff that was getting really close, and I thought maybe there might be something ready to move on this week, but everything, either the flaws didn't come out or it's uncovering more flaws as I move further into the rock. I'm really surprised. So I thought it was going to move along a little quicker than that from the way it was started out, but now I'm starting to think otherwise. So it might end up being a little tougher tumble than I was first envisioning. But there's nothing to move on. They've been rolling for 4 weeks. Everything's still in there, and I've added some just about every week. I mean, maybe last week we didn't add anything new. But there's room to add some more stuff. Everything's getting smaller, but everything still has flaws in it. So we'll add those 3. We've got 3 more pieces to add as we take stuff out or things get smaller. So that's where we're at, 4 weeks in, nothing ready yet. It's been 5 weeks on our Burris Creek Jasper, and last week I was a little bit down on them, thinking that we might not get anything that's very nice, but they're starting to look better this week. I'm having better hopes. But there's still nothing ready to move on to medium yet, and I really don't have much room in there to add anything because I haven't taken anything out, and it doesn't look like they whittled down too much this week, so I'm just going to leave everything in it. It's rinsed. Water's in there. 3 tablespoons of the 4670. And I think that there's a couple that are looking really close. So maybe next week we'll have something ready to pull out. But 5 weeks and nothing ready yet. It's been 6 weeks that we've been rolling the Burris Creek Jasper. And we have 4 of them that are ready to move on to medium grit. There's a couple of little spots on a couple of these that I don't think I can possibly get rid of if I keep tumbling them. So I'm just going to try polishing them and see what they look like. And I've only got to pick 5 to send in, so we'll see what it looks like. And there's a lot of them in there. The large majority of them in there only have 1 or 2 little spots left on each one that I'm trying to get rid of before we move to the next stage. So we took those 4 out. We didn't add any new last week, so I think we're just going to put all of it in there, and that is the rest of what we have. We'll put the last 3 pieces of raw in there, and everything else in there has been rolling for most of it 6 weeks, and some of it only 5 or 4 weeks, depending on when we added it. But that's the last of what we got. So we've got our water. I'm going to go a little less on the water. Got our water, got our rocks. We've got the 3 tablespoons of the 4670 coarse grit. And we are ready to, those are our rocks ready to move to the next stage. They're looking really good. So we'll get this back on the tumbler and roll it another week, and we'll see what they look like next week. It's been 7 weeks on our Burris Creek Jasper, and we're going to look at a few of them here. This is one of the larger ones that we have, and it's got just, there's a little spot. I probably can't even see it in the camera right there that I can feel. And there's a spot, well, there's a hole right there. I don't know if there's anything we can do about that. And then there's like a little crack in a spot right there. So it's going to have to roll a little while because it's for the tumbling competition. So we're going to try to make it as perfect as we can. And that's still a pretty big one. So we'll roll it down and see if we can't get to a spot where it's perfect. And then this is one of my favorite ones. And it's got, I saw one little spot back here. I mean, it's just a tiny little spot, but we're going to try to get rid of it. So everything else is looking really good on it. And then here's another one that's got one spot on it on the top there. And the bottom side, it's got one little spot that I can feel right there. So it's getting really close also. And then this one's got just a few little holes in it right there. And I don't know if we're going to get rid of those, but we're going to try. But it's looking pretty nice. And this one has, I've noticed this Burris Creek Jasper has got some holes in it. And I don't know if I'm going to get away from those, but we're going to roll a little bit longer and try. This has got some rough spots right there. But it's looking pretty good. And then this one is turning out pretty nice, but there's just one little hole on the back side right here. You probably can't even see that in the camera. Maybe you can when I get the reflection just right, but we're trying to get that whittled down a little bit more, and the rest of it actually looks really nice on this one. I think that one's going to turn out looking really nice. So that one's got another week left at least, and then this one has got us right there on that corner. There's a little notch in it yet that we're trying to get rid of. So those ones are all getting really close. The other ones that were in the barrel already have quite a bit of time left on, but we've got these 4 that we're pulling out today. Because there's a couple of them have one little spot on them, but you can see that it goes into the rock, so there's not going to be any getting rid of it. So, and they might not be any of the 5 that we send in, but we'll just see how they turn out after they're all done. So those 4 are coming out. So that gets us a grand total of 8, counting that little bitty guy, that are ready to move to the next stage. So we pulled some more out and everything's lost a little bit. So I'm thinking this week, and I don't have any more of the Burris Creek Jasper to put in there as filler to keep my barrel full. So I've got some polychrome Jasper that we're going to throw in there. That way I won't get them mixed up. They look totally different. So we're going to throw some of this polychrome in. It's a Jasper, so it should be about the same hardness. And it looks a lot different, so I shouldn't get it mixed up with any of my competition rocks. So we'll go there, and we'll put 3 more tablespoons of the 4670 grit, and we're ready to go for another week. All right, there's 8 weeks on our Burris Creek Jasper, and there's a couple of really tiny ones and one that's not so tiny, but it's not very big, but it's got some stuff that I just can't get it gone. So I'm going to pull it out of there for now. I might try messing around with it again later, but those little guys are coming out. Nothing else is ready to move on. So we've got that much. And we've got a little room in the barrel, so we're going to use this polychrome Jasper to fill the barrel. Because the Burris Creek is Jasper, and I'm assuming that this should have about the same hardness. And I don't want to put a bunch of filler on coarse grit, like media. So we're going to put that in. We'll do 3 tablespoons of our 4670 grit, and we'll roll it for another week. All right, it's been 9 weeks on our Burris Creek Jasper, and I think that there's flaws in the rocks that I keep exposing as I tumble it more, but I don't really want to turn in rocks that have flaws, so I'm going to keep trying to tumble them down to where there are no flaws. Everything in there is looking decent, but a lot of it has a few spots, and I'm pulling these 2 out this week. They've got a couple of little things, but I just don't want to tumble everything I have down to nothing, trying to get rid of it and have no flaws. So I'm pulling some of it that looks pretty darn good. These 2 look pretty good, so they're going to get pulled this week. I could always put them back in if I have some other stuff that turns out looking better, because I've got some of the bigger ones are still in there trying to work all the flaws out, but those 2 are getting pulled. I've got a little room in my barrel because everything's shrunk, and I pulled a couple out, so I've got some more. I'm out of the Burris Creek Jasper, so I've got some more of this polychrome that I'm going to throw in there to fill the barrel, because that's going to be one of my next tumbles. I might as well get started on some of that. So there's the filler of the polychrome, and like I say, it's been 9 weeks now. 2 more out this week, and 3 more tablespoons of the 4670 grit, and we'll be back on for another week, and we'll check it out again next week. It's been 10 weeks on our Burris Creek Jasper, and this week I'm pulling all of these out, and they're not perfect, but there are, like this one, you can see that crack in it, if it will focus on the top there. I don't know if I can get it in the camera to focus, but as it tumbles, it just opens up and opens up and opens up, and it goes all the way through. So there's so many spots like that in these rocks that I just can't get rid of the spots. So instead of tumbling them away to nothing and still having those cracks in them, I'm pulling them and I'm going to try polishing them. But there's like 3 or 4 more in here that I'm going to run a few more weeks. So I'll probably just start videoing again when I've decided to pull them all and we're ready to start going to the Lotto Tumbler. And we'll start back in when we're ready to go on the Lotto Tumbler, and I'll record how many weeks it was. But I'm not going to record every week from here on out. So when I come back, we'll be ready to go to Lotto Tumbler with them. It's been 12 weeks since we've started running our Burris Creek Jasper in a 3-pound lower tone barrel. And now I've gotten to the point where there's flaws in it that you keep exposing, and I keep tumbling them, and then you expose something else, so my rocks are just getting smaller and smaller and still have the flaws. So I've gotten to the point where we're just going to tumble them. We're going to look at a few of them here. Like you can see that one on the top there, if it focuses, how it's got a notch right there. And all of this one's actually got a lot of cracks, and you just keep exposing them as you tumble it. So I don't want to make them any smaller than they already are, because I've already made them quite small. Some of them are still pretty big yet, and they've got some nice colors, and I think they'll polish up nice. But like this one's got a little crack in it right there. You can see that little hole right there. And all of these rocks are full of that stuff. And you just keep exposing more and more and more and more to where I've given up. See, there's another one right there. You can see. So I'm kind of at my wit's end, and I hope everybody else that's doing this competition has got the same thing going on with their rocks that they have. But otherwise, my score might just be really, really bad. We'll see. So you can see that one. Here's another one of my big ones, and I really like that one, and it's like there now, it's wet, so it's got some cool stuff going on. But like this one's got a bunch of voids in it right there, and there's some lines on this side right here, and different things that if it was a normal Jasper that I'm used to tumbling, or an agate, you could just tumble it till that was gone, and then you'd be good. But this stuff has it all the way through, and it won't go away. So that will also be tricky as far as carrying grit over. Like this one was looking really good last week, and I thought it was going to be done, and then this week this is exposed. It's like it just broke that top layer off. That was starting to look really nice, and you can see there's another hole there. So there's just all the way through this stuff, and maybe a guy needed to cut all that off and have small rocks to have no flaws in them, but we will see. So I'm going to tumble this stuff in the Lotto. It's all ran through coarse grit now. It's all done with coarse grit. So we are going to load it all up in the Lotto tumbler, and we're going to run, next will be 220, or 120, 220, the medium grit, and then I'm going to run the 500 pre-polish, and then I actually got 1,000 grit aluminum, or silicon carbide that I'm going to run on these, and then we'll go to the polish. So I started with 3.5 pounds, and that's what I have left. I didn't put it on the scale, but in medium grit it won't really lose any more weight or anything, so I'll definitely weigh it when I'm done to see how much I lost. A lot of them are, I don't know if pieces broke off, but I've got a lot of them that are just tiny little specks. But that's why I tumbled them all by themselves, so that way I wouldn't get it mixed up with any other rocks. So I've got my water in there, and we've got our 3.5 pounds, or what we have left are our 3.5 pounds. And I'm going to start with, I got some brand new large ceramic media. Just to make, well, I guess on this stage it wouldn't contaminate anything because you're going to start on your coarsest grit anyway, but I decided it'd be a good batch to start using it on. Maybe just a little bit more. All right. Well, I will, with the Lotto tumbler, I normally put water in it when I put the rocks in, so it's essentially full of water. And then you'll put your fingers over the top and tip it upside down and dump all the water out, so everything inside there is wet with no standing water. And then we'll get it on the tumbler, and I'll get it rolling and show you what it looks like when it's rolling on the Lotto tumbler, which is vibratory, so you can watch it, which is a nice thing about that. I like watching it. And we'll get the grit in it. We'll get it going on the 120, 220 medium grit. All right, we've got all the water dumped out and everything's wet. We've got our medium grit here. I think I've got a scoop. Yeah. So we'll do about 2 tablespoons, and then it'll go for 3 days. I'll come back and check it in about an hour to see how it's looking, and then I'll check it a few times a day and see if it needs any water, and it'll go for 3 days. Alright, our Burris Creek Jasper has been in the medium grit in the Lotto tumbler for 3 days now. I already added some soap and some extra water to help. I do that to help get the slurry, and it rinses the rocks off a little faster, it seems like. So. All right, there we are. The Burris Creek Jasper for the Feather River Lapidary Club tumbling contest is looking pretty good. It's wet there, so it looks about like what it'll look like when it's polished. And it hasn't really lost anything in medium grit. It just kind of makes the scratches a little finer. It doesn't exactly remove much material. All right, I'm going to go through and clean the rocks a little bit better, and I'll clean the barrel out. And when we come back, I'll have it set up on the Lotto tumbler, and we're going to start getting them going in pre-polish, the 500 grit. All right, we're back at the tumbler, and we've got all the rocks in the media. When I load the Lotto, I just fill it about half full of water, and you put the rocks in the media in, and that'll pretty well get the water to the top. And then you
put your fingers over it, dump it upside down, and let all the water out. And that way everything inside is wet. You don't really want any standing water though, you just want everything wet. So at this stage, which is going to be the 500 pre-polish, you use a half tablespoon. No, it's a half a teaspoon. Yeah, it's been a while since I've ran the lotto. It's a half a teaspoon, and yeah, half teaspoon. And I use 1 tablespoon of the borax. So it just helps thicken the slurry, and it helps the polish stick to the rocks and all that stuff. So we'll add the half teaspoon of the 500 grit and the tablespoon of borax, and it will run for 3 days, and I'll check the water a few times a day. There's the borax. This is what the 500 grit pre-polish looks like. I'm just about out, but that'll actually go quite a long ways because you only use a half a teaspoon. There we are. I'll check the water in half hour or an hour, and add some more water when it needs it. And then also for the next 3 days, check it a few times a day and make sure it doesn't get too dry. And we'll be ready to move to the next stage. All right, today our Burris Creek Jasper has been in the Lotto tumbler for 3 days on the 500 grit pre-polish. I added some extra water and some dish soap to help get the slurry to wash off the rocks and out of the barrel a little easier. That's what we got. Looks a little redder than some of my other rocks, especially in the pre-polish stage. Normally it just looks gray. Well, nothing's changed a lot. It looks about the same wet all the way through these stages, but the scratches are a little finer on the rocks now. Normally after the 500, I would go to polish, and I would run a burnish cycle in the barrel and all that stuff because I polish in the same barrel that I do everything else in. But with these, I'm trying to get a little extra shine on them, so I've gotten 1,000 grit silicon carbide, and we are going to run 1,000 grit silicon carbide in them for 3 days. And then when we're done with that, we'll do the burnish cycle and move to the polish. So right now I'm just going to clean everything up. I'll clean the barrel up real good and the rocks, scrub them up, and make sure they're all clean. And when we come back, I'll have it all set up on the Lotto tumbler, and we will get it going on 1,000 grit, and it'll go for another 3 days. All right, we're back on the tumbler. Everything's in there. Everything's wet. And it's going to be the same process as we do on all the stages, pretty much. It's going to be a tablespoon of borax, and it'll be a half teaspoon of the 1,000 grit, and it'll go for 3 days. The only one that's different for me is the medium grit, and it's 2 tablespoons. And I don't usually use borax on medium grit either. So we'll get them rolling, add our grits, and then I'll just watch the water for the next couple days and make sure it doesn't dry out too much. That is the 1,000 grit. It's very, very fine. It's probably a heaping half teaspoon, but it's not very much, so I'm not too worried about it. I have a box here that's got 1 pound, and I'm pretty sure that that'll probably do, oh, I don't know. That'll probably do a couple hundred batches in the Lotto tumbler here, so maybe even more than that. Probably more than that. Alright, there we go. I'll check the water in about an hour, and then I'll just check it a few times a day. We'll be back after 3 days, and we'll move it on to the next stage. Alright, our rocks got done in our Burris Creek Jasper, that is, got done with 3 days of 1,000 grit, and I've already rinsed it, and I put it back in with just a tablespoon of borax to clean the rocks and clean the barrel better, because the next stage is going to be polish, and they call it burnishing or washing the barrel and the rocks a lot better so you don't carry any of the grit over to the next stage. So I've got that all done, and they're sitting there in water. So we're just going to rinse them off, and we'll glance at them real quick and see how they're looking, and we'll get them rolling and polish, and that'll be a 3-day step. Obviously it's wet, but I'm not going to take the time to let it dry or dry any off. I know what they look like. I've held some in between steps, and they're not shiny yet. Even after 1,000 grit in the Lotto tumbler, they're still dull. They're starting to get just a little bit of a shine, but they're not shiny yet until they're wet or until they're polished. So I'm going to go ahead and wash the barrel up a little better here and scrub a couple of these, and we'll set back up over by the tumbler and get it rolling with polish in it. All right, for polish, I use a half teaspoon of the aluminum oxide polish and a tablespoon of the borax, and then I go for 3 days. So everything's in there, everything's wet, no standing water, and we'll get them rolling, add the grit or the polish and the borax, and 3 days. Seen it? That's what the aluminum oxide polish looks like. It's like flour. Not much to it. And it doesn't take a lot in this tumbler. which is nice. Alright, I'll check it after an hour or so, check the water, and then I check it a few times a day after that, and when we come back, I'll probably have them all polished and rinsed and dry. So this is the results of our Burris Creek Jasper that we tumbled for the Feather River Lapidary Club tumbling contest. So these are the ones that I have that are not getting sent in. And I have the 5 that I'm going to send in sitting over here, and we'll look at those last. But you can see all the cracks in that, all the voids kind of like right here. And there's more here. And I just felt like no matter what I did, I just kept exposing more and more, and it's on all sides of all of them. So I'm hoping everybody else has the same problems that I had, because I could not get rid of that on some. Some of them are better. So there's one of our bigger ones, and then this is one of the other bigger ones. And you can see that it has it also right there. And as I tumbled that, it just kept exposing more and more and more. They look nice. They did take a good shine. But there are some spots where they're not perfect, like some other rocks that I have tumbled. You can get them perfect. And these ones I haven't been able to. And like I say, these are the ones I'm not sending in. The ones that we are a little bit better. Some of them have fingerprints on them, and that's why that didn't look as shiny there. Rub it on the towel and they're gone. So, there's not a lot to see here. They're all about the same. That one's pretty nice. I considered sending that one, but didn't make the cut. So, there's another pretty nice one that was also. This one's got the big crack in it right there. Probably could tumble that one more and get some of that out, but I got to the point where I was done. I still have time, so I could possibly mess with some of them more, but I don't plan on it. I think I'm going to call it and move on to my next projects, and we'll try again next year. So that's all the random ones that we're not sending in. We started with 3.5 pounds, and after grinding and tumbling them, I ended up with like 1.9 pounds. So the weight was just about cut in half. So I tumbled them a long time. This is number 1 of the ones that we are sending in. Turned out pretty nice. It's got like metallic in it. I don't know if they call that hematite, maybe, like on the banded iron formation rocks. But there's one of them. And here's the other one, or here's number 2. I like this one from the beginning, and like I say, there's some fingerprints on them, but if I put them on the towel, that all goes away. Yeah, so that one looks pretty nice. And then I really like this one. It's got some red and green going on in it. If I can get it to focus. I struggle with, there it is. That one turned out pretty nice. Again, you can see fingerprints on it. But it has a very good shine. There's a crack in that one right there on the top, but I'm gonna send it anyways. So there's those 3, and then this one. That one
looks really nice. And the last one we're sending is this one. So, those are the 5 that we are going to send in. And I believe that they, from what I've read, they judge them, and I think they look at them under a microscope, and there's like 5 judges and 5 rocks, and a perfect score is like 150. And I'm hoping they let everybody know what your score is, good or bad. And as long as I find out, I will post the results and share with everyone how we did, good or bad. So I've got some pictures, some before and afters, and I'm going to try to put some side-by-sides of before and afters so you can see how much they've changed, but I still have to figure out how to do that. But if I figure it out, they'll be on the video by the time I post it. So thanks for watching. It was a pretty good experience. It was a difficult rock to tumble, especially for a person that doesn't have a lot of patience and is very picky about what you move on, and you couldn't get rid of the flaws. So we will see how we do, and that's about all I have for that. And now we're on to the next project. Thanks for watching.